Whenever I'm watching a YouTube video of one of my favorite filmmakers, I'm always hooked in when I see the talking head portion of the video is interesting to watch and looks great. I personally used to think that it was the camera they were shooting on or the look of the room that they were shooting in. But the most important and impactful thing on your video's look is lighting. And in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly I light the talking head that you're looking at right now. In addition, if you stick around for the rest of the video, I'm going to show you the exact camera setup I use to shoot these videos. When I'm working in a small space, especially an office like this, to get maximum depth in your image is to shoot into the corner of the room. In my case, I choose the corner of the room where you see the door and a secondary room in the background, which gives me even more depth and layers to my image. The next thing is camera angle and shooting height. In this talking head specifically, my camera angle is slightly tilted up at myself, and this is another subtle way to add more depth to the frame, as well as make the space feel bigger than it is. The last thing in regards to composing is dirtying up your frame a little bit by adding elements to the foreground of your camera. In this case, the edge of my monitor is slightly in frame. This just adds overall more depth and more layers to look at in the image itself. When adding things to your foreground, you have to look at the concept of less is more. Sometimes it can get a little distracting if you're shooting through too many things. With basic composition out of the way, the next thing that we can look at is lighting. The first thing I like to do in any space is turn off all the lights, as well as block any external light that I can't necessarily control. In this room, I have a window to the left of me, and to block it out, I use a 4x8 floppy, as well as 2 small flags. I could easily get some blackout curtains or blackout material and tape it to the window itself, but I honestly haven't got around to that yet. The next thing I like to do is light the room before I light the subject, in this case, myself. To add some level to the room, I'm using 2 Titan tubes attached to the ceiling. The first being right above me to add a top lit source to the center of the room, as well as to add some light to the wall and the shelf behind me. The second is adding light to the entire room so the scene doesn't feel too dark. The reason I have a snap grid on the light right above me is so the light doesn't spill all over the room and make the scene feel too lit. In terms of the mood we're going for, I'm doing something that suits my personality as well as how I like to work in the space, which is pretty moody itself. And the next light that we're going to add is a tube light into the other room. This is another Titan tube set at a very low percentage. And I set this to a blue color as I want to add some color interest into my image without overdoing it. And why blue? Because it looks cool. I just really like to push the blue into the dark parts of my image, and it suits the vibe that I'm going for as well. Moving on to the bookshelf of the scene, I have 3 aperture MCs set up at a very low percentage just to add some splashes of light to the room. In addition, I have one of those MCs set up in the light of the room to acting as a practical light source, and this just adds a little bit of motivating light to the warmth of the scene. And lastly, on the shelf, I have one of these little lights from Amazon, and I can easily control the color as well as intensity of it. So I could go very bright. And I like to set this to the orange color. I don't know exactly what the temperature of it is, but it just sits there and adds a nice splash of light to that bottom section of the shelf, so we're not going to complete darkness. And finally, we can move on to talking about the key light of this setup. For small rooms like this, stands aren't really an option for me. This is my working area as well where I shoot these videos. So I wanted a solution that I could easily place my key light without any stands. And that solution were these wall mounts from Amazon. This wall mount provides a solution to placing my key light virtually anywhere I want in this room. And if I wanted to run an external audio kit with a mic, I can easily do that with the other mounts seen here on the other side of my room. The light I'm using is this small bicolor newer LED panel with a softbox. Obviously, when lighting anything, I would love a bigger source, but I wanted something that was easy to set up, as well as lightweight so I can run AC power right to the wall. In addition, I don't want any friction when shooting any of these videos. I want to sit down in my chair, set up my audio, turn on my lights, and shoot the video. If I'm fussing with putting one of my lights that I use on jobs all the time onto this stand, it's going to be pretty annoying, and I'm not going to be motivated to shoot any of these videos regardless. I have this key light positioned on the right side of my face due to the fact that I want the camera to be on the shadow side. Keying from the opposite side of your camera allows more interest into your subject as you are shooting on the shadow side of their face. The last light that I use is my monitor desk light, and it adds some wrap to my face as well as adds levels to my desk. As the viewer knows that we are in an office setting, it can be perceived that the light is coming from my monitor. All the products I just mentioned will be linked in the description below, but let's go ahead and see what all these tweaks and lights do to our final image. To film all these YouTube videos, I'm using a Sony FX3 paired with a 24mm vintage Nikon AIS Prime. I could easily use a photo lens to shoot all these videos, but I wanted something that reflected what we do as a filmmaking channel. So that's why I'm using vintage glass and something that resembles a cinema lens. To film these videos, I just turn my monitor around and I set my focus point with the nucleus follow focus system. And I just keep an eye on it as I'm filming in case I am out of focus. And one last thing I want to talk about is white balance that I'm using. Choosing a white balance can be tricky sometimes, but it comes down to the image that you want to create. For this scene specifically, I want something warm and inviting, but super contrasty. I have the camera set at 5600 Kelvin, the room lights at 3200 Kelvin, and my key light at 5600 Kelvin, as well as the desk light. And my practical light sources are set at around 2700 Kelvin. By doing this, the room becomes nice and warm, but the subject pops out with the use of daylight. With all this information as how I like these talking heads, you're probably asking yourself is how do I apply this to my actual work and real life productions? To answer that question specifically, I actually have a video queued up here where I go into these concepts specifically and how to apply them to real life commercial work that we do. And if you're interested in videos like this or have any suggestions for future topics, let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.